Hi, I'm John Feldt. You know, this time of year can either be very quiet with not many systems, weather systems moving across the area and not a whole lot of rain, or else it can be very active with a lot of tropical systems and hurricanes moving inland. So far this season it's been pretty quiet. Now we did have one system move through last week. We had a lot of deep-seated moisture ahead of it, and some areas did receive quite a bit of rain, over 3 inches in a few spots. Unfortunately, the core of drought in central Georgia received much less. Keep tuned to this week's edition of the Weekly Water Outlook for more details. This is the rainfall from last week. We really only had one system go through. There was a lot of moisture with it last weekend and early last week. Unfortunately, there just wasn't all that much lift, and the rainfall was the heaviest rainfall. 2 inches or more was associated along the immediate Gulf Coast across parts of Florida. And the most significant would be up in the northern part of Alabama, just brushing northwest part of Georgia, and then into a large part of Tennessee, parts of western North Carolina, and then up towards the north. This is pretty significant here in central Tennessee. There were a number of flash floods. Rainfall was 5 inches to 8 inches in a very small band in that region. Now, if we look at percent of normal rainfall for last week, you can see that rainfall in that band of heaviest rain was anywhere from 3 to as much as 6 times normal for the week. Across the rest of the southeast U.S., sort of a hit and miss. Generally, Alabama, Mississippi, a bit above normal. Georgia and definitely South Carolina, below normal. This has really been a long-term pattern. It's just been amazing how long we've seen rainfall a bit above normal in Mississippi and Alabama, and then below normal further off to the east. Well below normal rainfall occurred over the far central part and eastern part of South Carolina. That's that area of red, receiving very little rain in that region. Wanted to show you a couple rainfall graphs that started in September 1st. Go to the current time, and the white line is indicating the current week. So everything to the right is last week. Just to give you an idea of rainfall patterns. The image on the top is Raleigh. You can see there have been a number of rainfall events throughout the month. Pretty big gap though. This is only this is 1.5 inches, this top line. Pretty big gap for quite a while. Last week, a little bit over an inch and a half up into the 2-inch range. If we look at Atlanta on the bottom graph, again, it's been pretty quiet since the beginning of September. Little bits of rain here and there. This is only 1/10 of an inch of rain. The top of the graph on here is only a quarter or 0.15 inch of rain. So you can see the rain in the Atlanta region last week was a lot lighter, just a couple tenths, maybe up to a 1/4 inch of rain. So not nearly as much as occurred up in Raleigh. If we go towards the Albany area, I wanted to pick an area that's in the drought, more extreme drought. Some rain early in the month that looked sort of promising, but since then we've had very little rain, really only 3 episodes of rain, and the last 2 have been very modest, only a 1/4 inch around September 8th and another 1/4 inch last week. Any rain's welcome, but that's not going to do a whole lot to the drought that's been persisting in that region. And finally, in Huntsville has been getting some rain over couple months ago, but if you look at September so far up in this part of the state of Alabama, very little rain. It's been very dry. So they were sort of fortunate. They received that band of heaviest rain. They received 3 inches of rain, over 3 inches of rain, and that's probably pretty welcome because it's been a long time since there's been significant rainfall in that part of northern Alabama. Okay, now this is a daily stream flow from our colleagues at the USGS, and what we have here are the current stream flow. Reds are below normal, greens are normal, and blues are above normal. It corresponds very closely to the current rainfall. So over Alabama, Mississippi, along the Florida coast, and parts of the western part of North Carolina, you see areas in green. That's normal, or areas of blue above normal. But where there was very little rain, across large parts of Georgia and parts of South Carolina, stream flow is still very low, and that's that area in red, which is well below normal. Okay, we've been in tropical season. The outlook called for a lot of tropical activity this year. I'm going to look at that later this week in my blog, an update on the tropical season, so I'm not going to talk a lot about that today. But I did want to point out that we are going down now into the time of year where tropical activity normally begins to taper off. Now, this is about where we're at, and you can sort of see by October 1st we're down here, and by October 20th we're down here. So we're past the peak, we're now going down, and typically it starts to go down pretty quick. Now, we can have a lot of activity still in October, but keep in mind for every week that goes past, it really begins to go down fairly quickly. Okay, so the big picture. Well, September can be a very quiet month, as I've mentioned, and it looks like that will continue. We will have low pressure established very firmly over the northeast U.S., and that's going to result in a west or northwest flow over our region. So we're either going to have upper winds from the west or from the northwest. Either of those flow patterns are dry. I don't see a lot of transport of moisture into the area. I don't see a lot of atmospheric energy. The atmospheric energy is going to stay with this upper jet stream and be well north of the southeast U.S. So without much atmospheric moisture, without much lift, it's going to be a very dry week and a very quiet week over large parts of the southeast U.S. Here's the tropical steering flow, just to give you an idea what it looks like for the next week or so. The main drivers for tropical activity will be this trough of low pressure that I mentioned, that low pressure aloft, and then this huge blocking high. And that's why everything's been moving along and to the east side of that high, and then up towards the northeast. It's really been blocking activity. If something comes in low enough earlier in the tropical season, it might remain well south in the Gulf of Mexico. Either one of these patterns, these blocking high, does not look conducive for systems to affect, definitely not the Atlantic, and most likely not the Gulf as well. So right now it does not look promising for any tropical activity, and I've said many times before, we could use some for replenishment of water resources, and this year we've had a few, but many areas, especially the Carolinas, are going to most likely end up the tropical season with a deficit of tropical season moisture. This is our model, one of the global models, and I wanted to point this out on, this is a cumulative rainfall pretty much for this week. And don't get too hung up over the areas in green, that's light amount of rain, but I've outlined in that blue line areas that look like it's going to receive very little rain almost the entire week. And that extends across most of the region from Texas all the way across the Carolinas. Now, there could be some lighter amount of rain in here and there, but I think next Sunday when I prepare the weekly water outlook again, we're going to have areas that have received no rain at all this week. So, it's a time of year we don't get a lot of rain usually, but even on a dry time of year, it looks like it's going to be well below normal precipitation this week with no significant weather systems forecast to move through. Now, I will say let's keep an eye on Florida. The front will be draped in that area. There's a possibility of a low developing along that, which could enhance rainfall over parts of the Florida peninsula, but that's going to stay confined to that area, not move further north. As you might suspect, with no rain, this is a forecast soil moisture change for the next couple weeks. Fairly high degree of confidence that soil moisture will continue to dry out. In many areas, it's already very, very dry, and we could use some rain, but it looks like this time of year is not the type of year when we normally get that kind of rainfall. We're probably going to wait until at least November before more reliable rain starts to develop in our region. So this model, again, I have confidence in it, is showing below normal soil moisture anomalies over the next 2 weeks. So the takeaway points, pretty quiet weather pattern that we've been in. Looks like another quiet week. That'll result in a slow reduction of soil moisture. And once again, tropical landfall is not expected. Thanks for listening to this week's edition of the Weekly Water Outlook. We'll be issuing blog issuances throughout the week regarding water resources. And stay tuned to those, or else next week I will issue another Weekly Water Outlook. Thank you.